They never expected it. A mid-sized air force from a country outside the NATO alliance suddenly becoming a recurring subject in some of the most secure briefing rooms in the West. Yet here we are, with generals and analysts asking the same question. Why is Pakistan's Air Force commanding this much attention? The sudden spotlight on Pakistan's Air Force in NATO briefings can be best understood by looking at the surprising attention it has recently commanded in Western defense circles, where it was not traditionally viewed as a centerpiece of military power. For years, NATO and its allies have focused on conventional heavyweights like the United States, the United Kingdom, and increasingly on the rising challenge posed by China's People's Liberation Army Air Force. Yet, quietly and steadily, Pakistan's Air Force has moved from being a regional force to becoming a topic of strategic curiosity in discussions far beyond South Asia. This is not simply about Pakistan's long-standing rivalry with India, though that has shaped its defense posture for decades. The interest goes deeper into how the PAF, with limited budgets and fewer resources, has carved a reputation for being efficient, highly trained, and innovative in ways that larger and wealthier militaries have sometimes failed to demonstrate. NATO analysts are intrigued by how a force of Pakistan's scale is able to achieve consistent operational readiness, maintain robust aerial defense systems, and continue to modernize despite not enjoying the same economic muscle or global military support structures as many alliance members. The attention is also partly fueled by recent geopolitical shifts. With the West recalibrating its focus on the Indo-Pacific, Pakistan finds itself positioned at a crossroads of critical strategic interests, linked to China, bordering Afghanistan, and watching India closely. NATO briefing documents have started to highlight Pakistan's aerial strategies as examples of how smaller air forces can punch above their weight by adopting flexible doctrines and maximizing the value of their limited assets. It is precisely this efficiency and adaptability that makes Pakistan's Air Force a case study worth examining. For NATO, which constantly evaluates how allies and even non-allies conduct modern warfare, the PAF's ability to remain relevant, lethal, and unpredictable in its operations has become a matter of both interest and caution. This sudden recognition doesn't imply that Pakistan is becoming an ally, but it does suggest that its air force has proven itself significant enough to shape discussions in rooms where usually only the most powerful militaries dominate. The reputation of Pakistan's Air Force as a master of tactical adaptability has become one of the most discussed elements in defense circles, especially when compared to militaries with far greater budgets and hardware advantages. Unlike the United States or European air forces, which can afford to rely on massive spending and cutting-edge aircraft fleets, the PAF has historically had to function within constraints of limited finances, sanctions, and restricted access to top-tier Western technologies. This financial and logistical pressure forced it to develop a culture of adaptability, where ingenuity, rigorous pilot training, and innovative use of available resources became its strongest assets. NATO analysts have been particularly struck by how Pakistan's Air Force can quickly shift its doctrines to meet different types of challenges, whether it be conventional dogfights, counter-terrorism operations, or border skirmishes. It has consistently demonstrated that flexibility in thought and action can sometimes offset deficiencies in raw firepower. The emphasis on making the most of what is available has also allowed the PAF to test doctrines under real combat scenarios, providing lessons that are now being studied by militaries that often find themselves trapped in bureaucratic rigidity. NATO sees in the PAF an example of how adaptability can be cultivated deliberately and how this trait could prove vital in a rapidly changing future battlefield dominated by drones, cyber warfare, and electronic jamming, where agility matters more than luxury. This tactical adaptability is also linked to the PAF's ability to improvise under high-pressure situations. A key example often cited is its capacity to integrate diverse aircraft platforms into a coherent fighting force. Instead of relying on a single supplier, Pakistan has juggled American, French, and Chinese aircraft at different points in its history, creating a hybrid fleet that demanded innovative training and maintenance solutions. Far from being a liability, this experience has sharpened the PAF's ability to manage diversity and complexity, a lesson NATO commanders are keenly aware could be useful for coalition operations involving multiple nations with varied equipment. Beyond aircraft integration, adaptability also shows up in how Pakistan modifies its training programs to incorporate lessons from recent conflicts, updating pilot tactics almost in real time, rather than waiting for long-term reviews. This nimbleness, cultivated through necessity, has become a hallmark of the PAF and explains why NATO observers are taking it more seriously as a model for smaller air forces trying to stay competitive in a resource-constrained world. The JF-17 Thunder, co-developed by Pakistan and China, has become a central reason why the Pakistan Air Force is drawing the attention of NATO analysts and defense observers worldwide. Originally dismissed by many as a low-budget alternative to Western fighter jets, the JF-17 has steadily proven itself to be more than just an affordable workhorse. It represents a philosophy of cost-effective combat readiness, something that many NATO nations, especially smaller ones facing budgetary pressures, find worth examining closely. The aircraft has undergone multiple upgrades since its induction, moving from a basic multi-role fighter to an advanced platform capable of deploying modern avionics, electronic warfare systems, beyond visual range missiles, and precision-guided munitions. What makes the JF-17 remarkable is not that it can outclass Western heavyweights like the F-16 or Eurofighter, but that it offers a reliable, combat-ready platform at a fraction of the cost, allowing Pakistan to maintain a credible deterrent while avoiding crippling financial burdens. This aspect alone is forcing NATO to reconsider long-held assumptions about what defines effective air power in the 21st century, particularly in an age where drones and hybrid warfare are reshaping the battlefield. Another point of interest is the export success of the JF-17. Countries such as Nigeria and Myanmar have already acquired it, and others are considering it as a practical alternative to expensive Western aircraft that often come with political strings attached. NATO strategists are studying how the JF-17's growing market presence could alter the dynamics of Air Force modernization in developing nations, many of whom are looking for affordable solutions that don't compromise too heavily on capability. For NATO, this isn't just about Pakistan's strength, but about the possibility of a new model of arms proliferation, where smaller, agile fighters like the JF-17 could become the backbone of air forces in regions stretching from Africa to Southeast Asia. The affordability and versatility of the jet create ripple effects in global defense markets, something Western defense contractors are monitoring closely. The combat record of the JF-17 has also added to its credibility. Its role during the 2019 aerial skirmishes with India gave it not just operational exposure, but also symbolic value as proof of Pakistan's ability to hold its ground with indigenous technology. NATO observers see this as an indicator of how developing nations can close capability gaps through focused co-production projects and local manufacturing. The JF-17 has become more than just a fighter jet. It is a case study in how innovation, strategic partnerships, and affordability can combine to create a disruptive force in global military aviation. This disruptive potential is precisely why the aircraft and the Air Force operating it are now subjects of analysis in Western briefing rooms. Operational experience against real threats is one of the strongest reasons Pakistan's Air Force has started to attract NATO's attention. because unlike many Western air forces that largely rely on simulations, exercises, or limited interventions abroad, the PAF has been consistently engaged in real combat scenarios across multiple fronts. Over decades, Pakistan's pilots and aircraft have faced both state-level adversaries and insurgent groups, allowing them to refine skills in both high-intensity warfare and counterinsurgency air campaigns. This gives the PAF a uniquely practical edge that Western strategists cannot overlook, since lessons learned from actual combat tend to shape doctrine more effectively than theoretical training. For NATO, which constantly assesses how air forces adapt under pressure, Pakistan provides a rare case of a mid-sized force that has survived, learned, and grown stronger through continuous operational exposure. One major example comes from its long rivalry with India, where Pakistan's Air Force has repeatedly been tested in conventional air defense and offensive operations. Incidents like the aerial skirmishes of 2019, where Pakistani pilots engaged and shot down an Indian aircraft, showed that the PAF retains sharp combat readiness and the ability to make bold tactical decisions under stress. Beyond conventional warfare, Pakistan has also used its air force extensively in counter-terrorism campaigns within its own borders, especially in the tribal areas where insurgent networks once thrived. Precision strikes, close air support for ground forces, and surveillance missions have honed the PAF's ability to carry out sustained operations in complex terrains against non-traditional enemies. This dual experience, conventional and unconventional, has positioned Pakistan uniquely compared to many NATO states, whose pilots may excel in exercises but lack the same frequency of real operational exposure. NATO analysts are also intrigued by the way Pakistan has integrated lessons from these operations into its training and doctrine almost immediately, without the delays that often plague larger militaries burdened by bureaucracy. This ability to cycle battlefield experience directly into tactical training ensures that Pakistani pilots are not just trained for textbook scenarios, but for unpredictable, real-world situations. For NATO, which is preparing for the possibility of hybrid wars that mix state confrontation with irregular warfare, Pakistan's record becomes an important point of study. The credibility of a force is often measured not only by the machines it flies, but also by the experience of the pilots in the cockpit. And in this area, Pakistan's Air Force stands out for its battle-hardened skill set. This is why its operational record has transformed it from being seen as a regional air power into a subject of broader international military analysis. Pakistan's geography has always been central to its strategic importance, but it is the way its air force has adapted to this geography that has caught NATO's attention in recent years. Positioned at the crossroads of South Asia, Central Asia, and the Middle East, Pakistan finds itself sandwiched between powerful and often unpredictable neighbors. India to the east, Afghanistan to the west, Iran to the southwest, and China to the north. Each of these borders carries different security challenges, and the Pakistan Air Force has had to design strategies and capabilities that address multiple potential threats at the same time. Unlike countries that prepare for a single front, Pakistan has been forced to develop doctrines for multi-directional defense and rapid mobilization, and NATO strategists recognize this as a valuable case study for dealing with pressures in contested regions. What makes the PAF's approach compelling is that it does not simply rest on deterrence, but maintains the ability to project credible responses, even when stretched across several fronts. One example is the long-standing standoff with India, which demands that a large portion of Pakistan's Air Force remains prepared for high-intensity conventional warfare. At the same time, instability in Afghanistan for decades meant that the PAF was also tasked with counter-terrorism operations, reconnaissance, and border patrol missions in rugged mountainous terrains. Adding to this complexity is the need to monitor developments along the Iranian frontier and to coordinate with China, which has become both an ally and a defense partner. NATO analysts see in this environment a unique laboratory for studying how an air force manages stress across different theaters simultaneously. The PAF's ability to distribute resources, rotate squadrons, and maintain readiness in such a demanding geographic setting is something few air forces in the world have to master on a daily basis. Moreover, the strategic geography of Pakistan puts it directly in the path of broader global power rivalries. With the United States recalibrating its focus toward Asia and China expanding its influence, Pakistan's airspace becomes an arena of increasing significance. NATO briefings have noted